Identify risks is our second risk process. It is in the planning process group. What it creates is the risk register and a risk report and potentially updates to the assumption log as needed. Now I want to clarify with the risk register being created here. It's not the entire risk register, but at this point what this process gives me is risks and triggers. Risks are things that we think there's a greater than 0% chance they could go differently than planned. And triggers are indicators that something possibly could be happening. It doesn't mean it will happen, but it means conditions are such that something could happen differently than expected. And then as assumptions would be elaborated on, expanded, validated one way or another, created, eliminated, whatever all. The assumption log could be updated as we know more about project-related assumptions, because basically the validity of assumptions potentially influences the overall risk of the project. Now from an input perspective, there's a lot of inputs. As a general rule, any sort of a planning document that could go differently than planned could probably be considered an input for identify risks, because you want to see how valid that potential document is. So whether it's a various management plan, how do I plan to manage requirements, scope, schedule, cost, quality, resources, etc. And then you've got things like your various baselines, your scope, schedule, and cost baselines. How detailed are they? How accurate do you feel they are? Duration and cost estimates as well can influence risks in a project. And then your issue log as well. Potentially, if you have a lot of issues, that could show that you have risk exposure as it relates to the project. And then finally, a contract or an agreement, as PMI calls it, can be an input as well, because agreements potentially, depending upon what's in there, could create risk of getting certain things done by a certain date or for a certain dollar amount or a certain quality standard, etc. So expert judgment is going to be a big tool and technique here. Expert judgment often is going to be asking the tough question, well, why do you think this is not a potential risk? Well, I don't really have a good answer. Well, then let's put it on the risk register just to be safe. So SWOT analysis can come into play: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, document analysis, which is what I was just describing. So again, at this point, we've got a risk register populated with risks, things that could go differently than planned, good or bad, and triggers, indicators that something could go differently than planned. But it does not automatically mean they will.